Oh boy. Well, alright, it's time. Hey there guys, this is Tyler and welcome to the top 5 worst FNaF fan games of all time. I counted down the best FNaF fan games of all time last time, so let's do the opposite now. These FNaF fan games, at least in my opinion, are the complete worst of the worst, and the first, second, and third spots on the list are so awful and abysmal. Fourth and fifth aren't that bad, but still are bad. Now let's get this out of the way. This is my personal opinion. If you like any of these games, that is 100% okay. I'm actually happy you're able to like these games while I can't. So please don't hit that dislike button or start a hate storm in the comments over disagreeing with me. Please? So yeah, other rules include this. I'm only going to put one game from one series on this list. The first, second, third, and fourth spots are parts of their own respective series, so keep that in mind. The other rule is these fan games must at least have somewhat of a following or a decent amount of people who play and talk about the game, so I'm not going to include these kinds of FNaF fan games, because those would be too obvious of choices. With those rules out of the way, let's get onto the list. Coming in at number 5 is Insanity. Now this one is actually an unpopular opinion of mine. I do not like Insanity, but a lot of people do. Some of the picks coming up have a lot of people who really like those games, but also have a lot of people who don't. But Insanity is actually mostly liked among the FNaF community. So why do I not like it? For a few reasons. The graphics and models are pretty bland. They just don't have enough detail on the animatronic skin, and the locations are kind of dull to look at. Now, if I were to make these better, I would put more withered holes on the robots and for the locations to have some more visual appeal, like a few more brightening effects, and yeah. However, Insane Bonnie looks pretty decent though, I'll admit. I don't know if it's biased because Bonnie is one of my favorite FNaF characters of all time, I don't know. But he's still pretty decent though. Now in terms of the gameplay, this is where the game falls apart for me. It gets really boring. Now, the game can get difficult, which I kind of liked since it provided an experience at times. But yeah, the rest of the gameplay in this is pure boredom. And this game has got some unoriginal ideas too, like the flashlight mechanic, which by the way, it could have been improved. The flashlight is a major problem with the gameplay. It runs out too fast, and you need to wait for it to charge, which takes a bit. And you get it. It's unnecessary. Now, there was at least another thing I did like was the apparent story in this. At the time, it was still a novel idea, and I can respect this game for that. Another thing I can respect is the later improvement because little known fact. This fan game was mostly made by Blackout/Nitchy, the same person who made Dormitibus back in 2018, which in my opinion is one of the best FNaF fan games of all time. So something went right. And plus, even though using Wikipedia and fandom wikis for research is usually considered a sin, the FNaF Fangame wiki says this game was made in less than 2 weeks, so that's probably where the negatives came from if I had to guess. About the improvement with this game, the next entry shines more in terms of improvement later in the series or the developer's library of games. So now, let's get into number 4. Number 4, Five Nights at Sonic's 1. Alright, listen. Before I talk about this entry, let me explain. I know this fan game series has a massive fan base, especially, and I wanted to clarify this. I'm referring to the first game. In my opinion, the Five Nights at Sonic's games have gotten much better over time. I really liked Maniac Mania, and it's one of my favorite FNaF fan games of 2020 and even all time. And I heard rumors that Sonic's 3 and 5 are really good too. But yeah, I don't really like the first game. I'm gonna try and keep this entry brief because of the fact that this series has seriously improved over time, and talking down about Sonic's 1 is pretty much done to death. I only added this onto the list because it personally is my 4th least favorite fan game when reading the script. So please keep that in mind. Anyway, people's biggest problem with this game are the drawings. Honestly, they aren't bad per se, they just aren't the best, but they're decent though. Just the Finds of Sonic's drawings just got much better over time. I think that's the big point there with the drawings. My biggest problem with this game, in my opinion, is the fact it's a direct copy from FNaF 1, despite Sonic's mechanic being a little different from Freddy's. And another huge problem with the game, the power goes down quickly. Yeah, the power is a huge problem in this game. It drains down significantly fast and basically makes the game all about luck in the later nights. However, this was also improved upon in the later games like Maniac Mania having a power generator, so it isn't all bad. The only major con I have is the phone guy voice acting, but once again, improved upon later on in the series, so nothing serious. The only other cons I have are just minor, so they're just pointless to say. Some positives I do have, though, is the story that we can gather from this game is pretty alright, and it does have some reasonable logic, if that makes sense. Here, if you want an example, here's a snippet of the Night 1 phone call.
Because they had all their normal lives and stuff, they couldn't do that.
Like good old That Cyber Channel said, that's a fair excuse. Another positive I do have is even though the fact it borrows sounds from the FNaF games, the sound design is still good. Also, this is minor, but I love a little addition that FNaF 1 didn't even have, where the office poster would sometimes change to a more creepy version. Like, sometimes after flipping the camera, you can get a creepy Sonic poster, and upon clicking the creepy Sonic's nose, you get yeah. Anyway, this game's pretty bad, but not as bad as people say. I can respect this game though, and the whole series as a matter of fact, because of how much it seriously improved over the course of 5 years. That is probably something I can't really say about these next games, unfortunately. Alright, like I said in the intro, the last 2 entries were bad, but just not awful. However, these next 3 fan games are awful, at least in my opinion. This is a friendly reminder, if you do like these fan games, I have zero problem with it. I will even respect you for liking these games. I personally don't like them, and it's really great if you really do like these games. Anywho, let's just get straight into number 3. Coming at number 3 is the original classic Return to Freddy's, and no, I'm not the Tyler who made this game, or the whole series. It was a different Tyler. And okay, just like Finds of Sonic's, this is another fan game series with a massive fan base, so just listen to the warning I put before this entry. Anyway, this game's really bad. And unlike the Sonic series, this entire fan game series is actually pretty bad. It's improved slightly over time, but the series is still bad, while Finds of Sonic's both improved and became good. However, I think the first game is the worst in the series, so that is what this will be all about. Before we get into the opinions, fun fact, this used to be called Finds of Freddy's 3 Fan Made, because this was made before the official FNaF 3 came out, and Scott himself had to come in and request for Tyler to rename the game. So that was your little history lesson for the day. Now let's get into why this game sucks. The biggest negative I have with this fan game is how poorly it does the idea of combining FNaF 1 and 2. It was so sloppy and doesn't work that well at all. It's actually kinda sad. Plus it just had unoriginality into it. Also the gameplay was also pretty boring. That when I played it back in the day, I felt like falling asleep because, oh my god, boredom! Also the fact it stole candy from a mill back in the day, when it was called FNaF 3 Fan Made, was just a massive no-no. And as well, the lore is just complete utter garbage. Like, what even? Like, nothing interesting was put into the story, nothing original either, just... I really dislike this game. If there was one positive, it was the beginning cutscene where a little girl sang Rain Around the Rosie. That was actually really creepy and gives me an impression. Otherwise, I don't really recommend this game. And this is only number 3, by the way. The next 2 are gonna be an oh boy trip. Coming at number 2, Five Nights in Anime. Oh boy. Okay, this actually used to be my number 1 least favorite FNaF fan game of all time, but why not anymore? We'll get there later. Let me just explain the negatives with this game first. First off, This is literally FNaF 1, but with minor differences, like a vent mechanic, which is just like any other FNaF game or fan game, so not really a positive. So yeah, more originality could have been added in the game to make this better, but the originality conceptualized in this game has really bad execution, which is the fact that this series is a sexualized FNaF. See, this is a no. Mature-themed FNaF games can work. Day Shift at Freddy's, Five Nights at F-Boys, and some bits of Five Nights with 39 being examples. But this game doesn't work. It's just blatant and makes the game too weird, and not the good weird, the bad weird. Plus, it's honestly disgusting. I can't believe that I would say that about anything FNaF related, but just wow. And plus, the mature themes in Day Shift, F-Boys, and 39 were at least comedic and offered some good experiences, but I can't say that about this game. Just wow. And minor, but the lore in this game, whether it exists or not, is really questionable. I just don't recommend this game. However, why is this now my second least favorite instead of number 1? Well, dear viewer, there was at least one thing I really like about this game, and inadvertently another. My number 1 least favorite has one positive too, but it's not as good as the positive in this game. And that positive is BOO! I'm just kidding. The positive is the drawing / art style is surprisingly really good. Like, it's well drawn. Like, I'll give this game that. And for the other one that I mentioned advertently is a positive, Five Nights at Anime 3 is looking more original in terms of gameplay, still containing the already good art style with a less focus on the sexualized concept. So maybe it will be the same case as Five Nights at Sonic's, to where the game gets better and might end up being good. We'll just have to wait until it fully comes out. And that's something I can't say about number 1, by the way. Anyway, I don't actually have honorable mentions for this one, so let's get to number 1. Number 1, Tyler Tales The Quest for Cheese. Wow, what an awful game. Like, seriously, drawings in a FNaF fan game? Ew! Okay, just kidding. Game Joel page for Tyler Tales The Quest for Cheese is in the description below. More progress is being made onto it as of late, and it's going pretty well. Also, if you're new here, check out my most proudest series on my channel, Tyler Tales. It has offensive and teen adult humor, so 13 plus is recommended for most of the episodes. Number 1, Five Nights at Smudgers 4, Engines at War. This game, this whole series actually, it's really horrible. Like, really horrible. Yeah, the entire Five Nights at Smudgers series is actually really bad from the first game all the way to the 5th game, which the developer doesn't even consider a FNaF fan game. In my opinion, the 5th game in the series is actually the worst, but once again, it's not a FNaF fan game for some reason, so we're gonna go with my second least favorite, Smudgers 4. Yeah, Trevi, if you're watching this, minor criticism, but you shouldn't associate a non-FNaF fan game into an already FNaF fan game series. It gets people confused, and has certain YouTubers do this with their videos. Anyway, yeah, Smudgers 4 is, you already heard me, it's awful. Now, that one positive that wasn't enough to save this from being the worst is that the ideas and concepts here are admittedly pretty decent, especially in the gameplay, but the execution is really poorly done. I'm not joking, it's sloppy, the nights and missions play out in a wonky and quirky way, and it isn't all that interesting that it was probably meant to be. And the night portions are just really boring. Just like Return to Freddy's, I felt like falling asleep upon playing it. As well, the graphics are awful and lackluster. Like, seriously, they look dull and unappealing. Like, were the models and rooms done in like 5 minutes, each while on top of that being rushed? It detracted me from the experience while playing, and by the way, if this game's meant to be a joke game, it really fails. Miserably. As well, the voice acting's kinda bad. It didn't make an impression out of me, and the sound is kinda poor. It just didn't do it, and the sound design in general isn't that good either. Better choices could have been made personally. And finally, the story is a massive mess, and the secrets to the lore this game contains are only at best. I really do not recommend this game, like seriously, I do not, and I don't recommend the Smudgers series. How bad and overrated this series is the exact reason why I refuse to record this for the channel. And yes, I think Pop Goes is overrated, but it isn't as bad at all, and actually has the decency to have huge potential to be a great game. Oh, and Kane is able to take criticism on like a certain someone, which is why I refuse to give criticism during this segment, for the most part. As well, all of the fan games on this list, they all had the decency to improve later in their series or their developers' library of fan games. Insanity because of Dormitibus, Finds Sonics 1 because of Finds Sonics 3 5 Maniac Mania, and even though it's not a fan game and it is not out yet, what I saw of Rock Clones from Bud's Early Access gameplay, Finds an Anime because of Finds an Anime 3, and even Return the Freddy's because of Return the Freddy's 4, even though it was still bad. It was at least miles better than the first game. While meanwhile, the trend with Smudgers series is each game has gotten worse. Yes, Smudgers 5 is really bad. I've already explained why it's not on the list, but it still plays out a bit like Sister Location based off of the demo. And look, Trevi, if you're watching this, listen to me here for what I'm about to say next. After Smudgers 5, be done with the Smudgers series. Please, make something original. And no, not stuff like Smudgers 5. Stuff that is both not FNaF and Thomas the Tank Engine / Smudger. This series is not what you want to be known for forever because based off from the people I've talked to, making fan games about certain talking trains is done to death and is honestly laughable. I'll admit, Thomas the Tank Engine was a massive part of my childhood, and I don't regret it being a part of my childhood, but a lot of us who liked it back then moved on and grew up, and moved on to better and more suitable things. Try something new. People may like the Smudgers games, but a lot of people don't. I honestly do not want this for you, because I can tell you work hard in Smudgers, but I'm sorry, it's run its course. It's time for Smudgers to finally end, and for the final time, take this piece of criticism and advice in consideration, Trevi, because criticism is what helps people get better at what they do. And that is all for this section. Time for the conclusion. Well guys, that was in my opinion, the top 5 worst FNaF fan games of all time. If you disagree with this list, that is 100% okay. Opinions are opinions, and please don't take this personal. Please. It's not worth it. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy. In the description below will be each of the download links to each of these fan games if you do want to check them out for yourself to see if you agree or disagree with me. As well in the description is my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, Tyler Extras, the server address of my Minecraft Edition server, my FNaF AR username and friend code, and the game build page for Tyler Tails Quest for Cheese. As well, if you liked what you saw, please be sure to subscribe. That really means a lot to me. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everybody.